What is your idea of education in 3 words, in 3 ideas, please? Paula.
What I do daily is I invite teenagers and young adults to do their own social action projects.
Thank you. Pavlína.
For me, the perfect education should be accessible to anyone, relevant and personalized.
I totally agree with what's been said, and I would just add to that that it should be community-driven, it should be all about empowerment, and it should be really in the diverse, not only with people, but also with perspectives.
And another question is that you seem all to be disruptors. You want to reinvent education. What would you keep from the past? One thing you would keep from the past?
The passion to learning.
For me, understanding that school is not a place for learning, but it's also a place for social interactions, where you learn how your emotional connection to others.
Yeah, Pavlína got it right. I wrote breaks. Basically, that's what I would keep. In work life, you don't have breaks, you don't interact so much with other people around at work as much as it used to be before. So breaks, so people can interact and speak with each other and understand each other better.
So you're not a big fan of Zooming? No, I guess, and that's probably, you're absolutely right on that. You didn't say knowledge, you didn't say culture. This is what bothers me the most, to be honest. I have the impression that today those new pedagogies focus a lot on skills, on the teamwork, for example, on emotional capacities, things like that, but we all seem to forget about history, geography, things that can make us cultivated. And I know that this is a very old-fashioned concept, but one that I badly miss, because for me this is the road towards political manipulation. Ignorance is actually the breeding ground for autocracy, I believe. Do you think we should also stick to that? Does it have a place also in your education recipes, or do you think that we tend to overplay it in the past?
Absolutely. So my initiative is called Beyond Theory, and it happens often that people think, oh, you want to ditch the whole theory. It's not like that. The thing is, I just don't believe it's the most efficient way to learn theory this way, that the teacher tells stuff and everybody needs to memorize it. I believe it's much more efficient, and like you can memorize it for much longer if it's student-driven, if it's driven by the interest, by a passion coming from the student. And then the student can search for it, can ask good questions, and will remember that for much longer. So I can see that while doing a social action project, of course, people learn teamwork and creativity and critical thinking, communication, but at the same time they gain a lot of knowledge, but it comes from them, from their own interest.
So it's rather the way you get this knowledge, but you wouldn't basically throw knowledge to the dustbin.
Absolutely not. However, memorizing a lot of facts is just doesn't make sense so much anymore if we have a smartphone in our pocket and we can search for a lot of stuff. So some, for sure, maybe not all of it.
Okay, thank you. I will challenge you on memory after that. But anyway, Pavlína, what do you think about it? Do you keep also knowledge as an important pillar of your education recipe?
I think we need to have a shared baseline, and I think that's really important, kind of to learn those basic things. But at the same time, we need to realize one thing, that only 1 in 10 people by the year 2030 will have a job they have just right now. A lot of jobs will disappear, a lot of things will changing, and we are always talking about education when it comes to school, but we need to realize that it's going to be a lifelong learning in order to adapt to what's going to come to our future of work. And that we shouldn't only think about like what to learn at school, but we should understand what could be our personalized learning journey through our whole life, and how do we direct for that. So I think it's not only learning, yes, memorizing at school, but it's also learning, for example, digital citizenship. That means that you are able to find the information properly and filter, for example, what's fake for not, and you're able to find the resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, but precisely, Pavlína, you said that the lifelong learning, I think somebody like Shakespeare never stopped learning, or Plato never stopped learning. I mean, are we not reinventing the wheel with this concept, lifelong learning, lifelong learning? This is basically, yes, this thirst for knowledge, we should never lose it, no?
There's this Japanese word, I'm going to pronounce it wrongly in case you speak Japanese. It's called shoshi, and it's called it's the beginner's mindset, and it's approaching everything in life with the excitement from learning. And I think we really need to keep that, and that's one thing we should really cherish, this excitement of new things. Because when you look at the technological acceleration that's coming, I mean, in last 50 years, we had the same level of acceleration as in last 200. So we need to be excited about new things that are coming. We need to be able to be flexible to adjust to them, and we need to be optimistic about the futures in case when it comes to our learning as well.
In French, they have a word which is called émerveillement, the capacity of being marveled, you know, and to keep this thirst for knowledge. And I think that's very important. And Samuel, you as a talent specialist, again, what's the part of knowledge in the construction of talent? Is talent just something that spontaneously comes to you, or something that you have to work on and grow?
I would say that it all starts with that initial spark. That, you know, sometimes you just see something and you just want to dig down and get into that rabbit hole further. And with the current new usage of technology, TikTok, I can just borrow what Kuba just said on the stage nearby. He said, you know, 80 million people are searching for new book ideas. And this is the spark we need. And I believe that in the new world, it's not about you need to go to the library, you need to go to school to have it. But I love that the technology is making it so accessible that whichever rabbit hole you really want to go into, you can. And you can explore these vast opportunities out there on the internet.
But Samuel, except if TikTok only pushes you to watch 90 seconds videos, which is something we also discussed. I mean, how can you concentrate on a 200 or 500 pages book on a classic that requires a lot of concentration if your brain has only been trained to watch 90-second videos? And that also comes back to the memory that you're saying before. You know, I used to be a detractor of memory. In university, I didn't like it. But at the end, now since we have those horrible smartphones in our pockets, we don't even remember phone numbers, Paula. And you know, sometimes to think, you also need to have the facts here, not necessarily on your screen. I disagree with you that it's making us dumber, I have the impression.
Yeah, so I also heard that using GPS all the time, like for every single road you take, makes you dumber. So it doesn't make sense to use technology for everything, that's for sure. But also it makes sense to use the technology. So what I mean is, still, it makes sense to gain knowledge, to memorize things, but the skills, like I said, these are 4C skills. This is the group of skills I believe are skills of the future. These skills needs to be practiced. You don't have them in your smartphone, and you can't Google how to cooperate in a team better. You can do it, of course, but it's just it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make you a better team player. You need to work in teams a few times to understand, to get what type of team player are you, and how would you like to work in a new team that you find yourself in. So this is why I believe these skills are, well, they don't happen in school as often as they could to prepare us for the work and for our lives, which is full of teamwork, full of cooperation.
Pavla, you also wanted to react to that.
Can I add with the technology? Because I think we often kind of make a difference between the technology and the newspaper from paper or books. But it can be both. I mean, one of the most successful campaigns were done by New York Public Library. And they introduced like the classical book like Anne Frank's Diary or Cervantes. I know you love that one. In the form of Instagram stories. And they kind of introduced their new readers, and they just showed them on Instagram stories. This is such an exciting book. And they said they saw a spike of people coming to the library borrowing those books. So I think, like, you know, if you get introduced to a book on TikTok, then you can end up reading the actual book. And it's often like that when it comes to learning. I think TikTok is one of the great, or YouTube is #1 resource for young people when we look at Gen Z numbers. They consider YouTube a learning platform, and they are learning new skills on that. And I think that can be a gateway to more traditional ways, like you decide, you maybe watch TikTok video, then you watch a YouTube video, and then you go back to school to study policymaking.
Could be if we all had the reflex, indeed, of controlling our consumption of screens, but that's another issue, maybe. Samuel, you want to react to that? On what side are you?
To me, it's two different things, right? One is what can initiate a spark, and then what do you do with it? We all agree that the spark is necessary, and we all agree that it helps with the technology and the spread of it. How do you react to that spark? I think that's where the community comes in. And that where it really matters to be in those right physical spaces, to be next to those people who will get you out of the screen and get you into the real world, and you start building things together. And that's how the magic happens. And that's where the future of education is heading. That's where the future of workforce is heading. To be more collaborative, to really understand why some people do things this way. How was this done in the history? It's through this mixture of different ideas that we get to that one point. All starts with a spark, but then you need the right community to take it to the right direction.
Thank you. I'm going to submit you 2 quotes from the same person. I will tell you at the end who it is, and it's not Cervantes. And I would like to have your opinion on that. So the first one is, learning is not a child's play. We cannot learn without pain. And the same person also said that excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intentions, sincere efforts, and intelligent execution. And when I listen to you, and allow me here to play a bit the devil's advocate, because of course those discussions had much more nuance, but I think for the benefit of the audience, I have to play this role. You seem all to be very happy about the spark, about the talent, about finding yourself and having your emotional skills developed at school. But this person, and it's not a nobody, said it's also about pain and discipline. And I miss also sometimes this angle in your disruptive point of view. Should I tell you now who said that? It's Aristotle. And Aristotle was not only a big philosopher, he was also the preceptor, the teacher of Alexander the Great. So I think he made a good job. And this was his motto. What would you answer to him?
So what comes to my mind, and also referring to what you previously said, if we could consciously decide on how long do we consume screens, it's also if we trust ourselves or trust teenagers to develop their own paths, and they will critically look at, for example, how much they consume the screen. It doesn't have to be a teacher or a parent standing behind them and saying, oh, you can't do it.
Screens can be compared to cocaine.
Yeah, but I work with teenagers, and I can see that they are very conscious about it. They put limits to themselves. It doesn't have to be a parent. So, it can be also done this way. And I believe this is much more efficient for your adult life. Because, if you, as a teenager, as a child, develop these skills to search for knowledge, to gain new skills, but also to discipline yourself, to decide yourself to do some hard work. Not that somebody is forces you to do it, but you decide it for yourself. Then these are the skills you will benefit from throughout your whole life.
So to decide for yourself since you, 5 years, 10 years, 15?
Yeah, various things. Like I wouldn't let a 5-year-old decide about the screen, for example, right? But a 15-year-old, absolutely.
Okay. And Pavlína, what about you? Do we have to learn with pain or not?
Unless you're a BDSM fan, I don't think so. I think if something is painful, you don't want to stay with that. And it's Malcolm Gladwell, who's later joining you on stage, who said that you need 10,000 hours to get to the mastery of things. And if it's 10,000 hours of pain, you have to be really kinky to do that. And so I don't agree with that. I think it can be exciting, and it can be something that is great. And I think we have all this technology, we have all the approaches, we have the communities, we have the relationships that you can build through that can get you to the 10,000 hours much faster and more effective way.
Don't you need a bit of pain to also sometimes discover what you like? Do you think that Olympic champions do not have some pain sometimes when they are in the swimming pool? Do you think that, I don't know, Mark Spitz, before he had 7 gold medals, didn't have to discipline himself, go to the swimming pool for years and for years and for years to get those 10,000 hours? Again, just one thing, because I know that you have been active on that. I read a couple of interviews of yours in the press. We tend to think, some people think, that the Generation Z, basically half of this audience, is weak. They sometimes call you snowflakes, that you lack resilience. That was also my point. And you seem to disagree a lot with the persons who say that this generation is weak.
Yes, definitely disagreed. And coming back to that pain, I think choosing the right job and choosing what you want to become in this world is already painful. So I don't know why learning for that should be painful in the first place. And I think, you know, what we are struggling with, and when looking at Gen Z, there is a paralysis of choice. You have a choice of doing anything. And then how do you choose that? When my parents were growing up, or their grandparents, probably their only choice was becoming a farmer, and that's it, kind of. And I can be anything. And what's the worst thing? I can be anything, but in 10 years, it will be completely different. I didn't have a job in last 10 years that existed 10 years ago, or worked with the tools. So, you know, betting yourself on like becoming a UX designer or a president, or I don't know, is, you know, that's a bet that's very uncertain in today's world. And I think that is already kind of like painful.
Mm-hmm. This uncertainty is painful.
I think so. If you're uncertain about girl liking you, isn't it painful?
You adapt.
Okay. Yeah, I will give you my therapist's number, maybe.
No, maybe not. That's why, maybe you just adapt and that's it. I just changed jobs 2 years ago, so believe me. But anyway, the points you made are also very interesting, because it's true that the world is changing much faster. And what I heard as well, even from education gurus, that it's also this capacity of adaptability, and to change from one job to the other. And at the end, also that comes, this is a discussion I also wanted to launch with you, Samuel, on talent, precisely. And talent is becoming a scarce resource, because artificial intelligence is going to change the work, is going to change also the way we learn, and there are jobs that will not exist, but something so far that artificial intelligence cannot replicate is talent, is creativity. And I have the impression that, especially, I mean, this is really your job is to attract but also retain talent. And that's also, you see, we even agree on this one. It's fantastic. And so what are the recipes for that? Samuel, it's your job. Tell us.
Recipes for keeping the right talent?
Yes. And whether you also agree that education should be about developing talent.
100%. I think that the very first thing that many people don't get right when it comes to keeping their talent is that they assume so much. And one person, my former teacher, is in the audience, who told me that assume stands for you are making ass of you and me.
Who is the former teacher?
Mr. Yarrow. Oh, he just went to the bathroom. But
Tough luck.
Yes, and what I feel like many organizations do horribly wrong is that they basically think that they got it handled. They believe that the posts they are making are good enough, and when they talk one-on-one with people, you know, they just say they are good. So unless you measure it, you don't know what it is. So I think that the biggest shift we will see in talent is to shift just from, you know, trying to do your best to really try to measure it, implement various surveys, talk to those people, hire professionals to help you figure out what is the right recipe for your organization, what is the DNA of your organization really is. It's a lot more complex. There is a real science behind it.
And this is where you bring this added value, and because this is indeed like a new field of knowledge. So in the field of human resources.
Yes, we at Behavera do precisely this. We try to look into your internal data, and then we match it with our data, which comes through surveys, assessments, speaking with people at your organizations. It's really, it's HR tech in practice. It's where the future is heading, where you won't be able to rely on someone's intuition, but you can scale the intuition with data and with knowledge, and plot it against thousands of other organizations which have done this the same, and then can predict better what will actually be happening.
Thank you. Just a little reminder that the microphone is still standing here. It's a bit lonely so far, so don't hesitate to get your own questions. Actually, we have one, so let's take it now. Just introduce yourself quickly, and the floor is yours.
Okay, hi, thanks for the reminder. My name is Dori, and I work as a university teacher. I teach basically how to be creative. I teach designers. And so my question to you guys is, I'm asking how do you see this education can be a bigger priority than profit, or to achieve big goals in a company? Or is education primarily for that kind of success? So it has to prepare you for finding your place in a company and creating great profits and KPIs and whatnot. Or what's it supposed to do? Is it supposed to just make you happy? It's kind of for that
So
pain
is it
question.
for your own happiness or to make your enterprise profitable?
Yeah, is it for you to be useful, like Thomas the engine?
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Good question. Thank you very much. I think it's a question for the three of you, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be very brief here. I feel like it's a lot more about helping to create and craft your own purpose in life. So whether it's at a company or someplace else, no, that's up to you. But it's really about trying to really understand who you truly are, try to rediscover who you are continuously, and then try to pinpoint your interest towards that and continuously educate yourself. So it's a lifelong journey, I would say. And there isn't right or wrong answers, and it certainly doesn't need to be for a company or for freelancing. There is so many different paths. That's the beauty of it. That's life.
So I think we can all agree that education makes us better people, and if we are better people, we are making the world a better place. And I have said that cliche, but that's why it's so important. And for example, one of the things I stated in my initial remark was that I think education needs to be super accessible, even to the people who are very poor. And one number that I want to shoot at you is if your parents don't have a high school degree, there's only a 2% chance you are going to get to the university and finish it. So you're basically locking people in when they are started. And I think it's our role as educators, policymakers, and even social workers, anything, to make it accessible. Because imagine how much GDP we are losing just by the fact that we are not giving access to education to everybody that is around. And I know you're not a big fan of technology, but technology is something that is allowing us, for example, to reach people who are poor and with their mobile phones. But we need to kind of understand that and empathize with their know-how, and maybe start creating apps that are for Android phones and not only the newest iPhones, or that work without data or something like that. So for me, like, one of the key points is accessibility, really providing education to everybody out there.
Books are very accessible, by the way. Very easy. But anyway.
So I can tell you that people, teenagers who do social action projects with us, with my foundation, become very successful entrepreneurs later on. And it's not only the teamwork and creative thinking that they acquired, but also the fact that they adjust to the needs of people, to the real needs of people. And this is what makes also a successful business, that you meet existing real needs. Not just a super creative idea that nobody wants. You need to create something that people really would like to buy. And this is where empathy comes in handy. So I can see that teaching empathy at school profits you in capitalism.
Pavlína, you mentioned accessibility there. I think one of the paradoxes is that school has never been so accessible that in the last 50 years, I mean, school has never been so democratic. I mean, at least in Europe, basically you have free school for everyone. It's also true that that didn't solve all the problems. And for example, one of the things that you're focusing a lot on, and I think is very interesting, is adults. So this free accessible education did not always provide the best tools so that adults wouldn't stay offside when they become adults. And one of the things we should also be speaking about today is, like, what do we do with adults that are actually off the road when they're 40, 50? Is there a chance for them? They are lost in this ever-changing world. How can we put them back on tracks?
One note before I start, I don't think there is something like free school. Even though if the education is free, and we come from post-communist countries where the education is free, it's often not, because you have to travel to the school, you have to be able to afford going to the school, you have to, for example, buy the textbooks, the physical textbooks, and so on. So I just want to kick this out of the table, because I think that is already kind of providing a big gap from that. But let's look at the demographics. The demographics is obviously changing. If we look at there's, for example, a study from BCG and Aspen Institute that says by the year 2030 in my country, Czech Republic, we will have 18% of bigger the group of people between 50 and 65. Those are perfectly healthy people. Those are people who are going to be in a great shape, also thanks to the medicine. But we are often kicking them out of the workforce. And I think we really need to start thinking how to incorporate it. Because I think if we look at, for example, Harvard Business Review data, they're claiming that innovation is is driven by the diverse teams. And diverse teams is not only men and women, but it's people coming from different ages, people coming from different backgrounds. And we really need to not only kind of focus on providing to the young and getting them to the workforce, which is, I think, also very important, but also keeping the people like in there. And for example, just right now, 54% of jobs in the Czech Republic need digital education or digital skill set. But by the 2030, it will be 90% of jobs will need digital skill set. And if we are kind of like leaving all those older people behind who don't know how to use that digital citizenship properly, we are lacking behind as a country. By 2030, if we stop paying attention to those people, our GDP will be down by 16%, according to that study. So I think we really need to start focusing on that. On the other hand, I want to put one last number. I know I'm obsessed with numbers. 68% of CEO positions in the US are held by the people who should have been retired by now. And I think that is creating kind of a disbalance when you have like young people pushing into the job market, but at the same time, the old people who kind of, and I will say it will sound horrible, but I don't mean it in that way, who kind of seem that they don't know how to use Google, who are keeping those positions. So it's kind of, I think, that's a very difficult position that we are needing to solve in that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I want to react to that because, for example, Paula, you, as a specialist in entrepreneurship education, your type of education also makes really bridges schools with the labor market. Huh? And do you think that those skills that you acquire through entrepreneurial education are ones that will last forever and will actually allow you basically to automatically upskill yourself, reskill yourself, and not be off tracks?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also continue what you said with an example of a social action project done by teens who decided to help elderly entrepreneurs during the pandemic and advertise their businesses online. So basically teens said, okay, we know you guys can't do it yourself, so we'll do it for you. And they actually helped many businesses survive thanks to this teaming up of two generations, which is super cool. And I believe that, yeah, something like this, like seeing the need, searching for the need, will stay with you for a very long time and will keep you up to date.
That seems to be also the road towards adaptability, which is the reason why I should visit a therapist. But Samuel, please, you want to react on that, and then we will give the floor to the standing mic.
Sure, I feel like when it comes to the diversity of the workforce, when it comes to its age, it's really important. Especially because of the fact that we need to include everyone, because we are building these things for everyone. So many times there are these big CEOs in America, which are grocery CEOs, which don't know how to digitalize, for instance, because they don't have many young people in the leadership positions. But then some of them don't include the middle tier people, are just lost in middle management and are unhappy about things. And we see that in our data quite well. So it's a big mismatch. Not nearly enough time to address it properly here.
Thank you. Please, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Lily and I'm a secondary school student. And my question would be back to the previous topics. You have mentioned that there are certain types of informations that you shouldn't learn or like not necessarily necessary to be learned. How can or could you tell that what kind of information is necessary to be learned or not? Because I was always said that each and every information you learn, you can use it in the future, and you can have deeper and more interesting conversations if you know a lot more. Thank you.
Maybe that comes back maybe to the point on culture as well and pure knowledge. Please, the floor is yours.
Maybe I'll start. I have an example from my own experience during my high school. I had a history lesson where you had to memorize all the wars and all the kind of prehistoric things. I think everybody in the audience is kind of nodding in pain of remembering that. And then I had another history lesson where we took different approaches how to interpret history. And we would take, I don't know, Second World War, and we would look at it through the lens of positivism. And then we would look at it through the lens of, I don't know, futurism, and so on and so on. And I think that is important, not just kind of learning the war dates, but also being able to recognize how to put them in context, how to interpret them for your future use, how to use your critical thinking when thinking about those things. And I think that this is often what we are lacking in school. So I'm definitely not about like kind of ditching that, but I'm thinking about how to relevantly work with that information that would create a more effective baseline and more effective bridge for communicating with everybody.
Thank you. Paula, please.
I think it comes back to what Samo said about the purpose in life, or your purpose. So because it's very easy in today's world when there's so much information and you can basically be anybody in the future to learn and study and study and study and never finish because there's so much. But I believe that once you know who you would like to be or what's your purpose in this world, then it's much easier to make these decisions. Okay, so for this purpose, this is important right now, and the other things are maybe less important, and I can put less time into them.
Thank you. Samuel, you want to react as well?
Yes, of course. To me, it's all about continuously learning stuff which really matters to you. So it comes back to purpose. It comes back to the relevancy of things. So there's so many things that we can learn, but only so many things that actually matter to us right now at this point. So it's all about how can we select those things and learn them as efficiently as possible and understand them critically in as good of a way as we can.
Thank you. We have a very, very last question because we're supposed to end up in 17 seconds, but no worries. We have at least 1 more minute. So please ask your very quick question, and I'm waiting for your very short answers.
I'm Martin. I am a university student and a junior architect. And my question is, what do you think how school can help children to moderate their own technology uses? Because one of you said that your students are very good at this, but in my environment and myself are kind of struggling with the right use of technology.
I like very much this question. I think it was you, Paula, who said that they can be themselves and moderate themselves, and apparently it's not your experience.
Oh, actually, it's also not my experience, but my personal experience is also like this, that once in a while I find myself using the screen much more than I intended to, and then I make adjustments. So that's what I mean, because, there's a huge team of psychologists thinking how to make it more and more addictive for us. So it's difficult to compete. I guess there are numerous ways, but I think self-discipline is one idea.
So you are saying that is everyone's own business, not the school's business?
No. In Poland, in schools, you can't use the screen at all. Only in certain particular subjects when you sit in a class with computers, but otherwise you can't have a phone. In some schools you can use it during the breaks, but in others you can't even do that.
Samuel, you want to react as well?
I'll be super short. I don't think it's about censorship, getting rid of the phones. It's about providing great alternatives. So instead of you watching, 2 people debating, you can go to a debate class with other people to learn how to debate and do it. So in case you can see these alternatives, and these are the things that are being, promoted through the TikTok algorithms, etc., and get you there, that should be the right antidote. So get meaningful activities with people you enjoy spending time with.
A round of applause to thank our 3 speakers. Many thanks.